On Friday last week, new rules outlined in the Online Safety Act and implemented by OFCOM came into effect. The rules are intended to keep children safe online, with platforms now needing to verify users' ages before they're able to access content intended for adults, such as online porn. As you can imagine, this move was highly controversial. On one side of the debate, there were those that argued that this was a positive step, and one that would be effective at reducing the number of children accessing porn. However, on the other side of the debate, there were those that argued that not only would these new age verification checks put anonymity at risk, they'd also be ineffectual and prevent users online from seeing other, less harmful content as a result of over-blocking. So in this video, we'll explain the new rules introduced by the Online Safety Act, the pros and cons, and whether the rules will actually work. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. Now, the Online Safety Act actually made its way through Parliament all the way back in 2023, under the then Conservative government. As part of the Act, Part 5 outlined what is now known as regulated pornographic content. This is all the kinds of content you'd expect, with the Act defining it as content of such a nature that it's reasonable to assume it was produced solely or principally for the purposes of sexual arousal. Any user from the UK that wants to access this kind of content would have to prove their age, either via age verification or age estimation. Both of these methods must be of such a kind and used in such a way that it's highly effective at correctly determining whether or not a particular user is a child. It's worth pointing out some exceptions and important clarifications about the Act. On the content side of things, the Act specifies that content that consists only of text, or text with a non-pornographic GIF, emoji or other symbol, doesn't count as regulated. Additionally, the Act specifies that the rules only apply to services that have links with the United Kingdom, which they specify as having a significant number of UK users, or UK users are a target market of the service, although it's not specified what a significant number of users actually is. In reality, though, this doesn't actually exempt that many websites. So, this is essentially how the Act works. But why wasn't it implemented in 2023 when it first became law? Well, Section 82 of the Act makes clear that the UK's communications regulator, or OFCOM, was required to publish guidance for providers of internet services, basically the porn sites, explaining to them exactly how they should either verify or estimate the ages of users. This guidance was published in April this year, at which time OFCOM set a deadline of the 25th of July for websites to actually implement the proposals. A failure to implement the safety measures could risk a website being fined up to £18 million or 10% of their worldwide revenue, whichever was higher. Wanting to avoid such fines, many of the major porn websites and other social media platforms that host adult content have now implemented the age checks. Different websites are using different technology and checking in different ways. However, Ofcom have cited these as some of the methods sites can use. Now, obviously, there are some fairly big criticisms of many of these measures. Ofcom has not established a central agency to check age, so any user attempting to be verified via their bank account, email address, or mobile network is doing so by giving a private third party sensitive information about themselves. The verification itself will often happen only with the third party, and the porn site will not have access to a person's sensitive information. However, this still requires trust in this third party, something that people could find difficult given the nature of the content they're trying to access. Another criticism comes with the age estimation. This works by asking a user to take a picture of themselves and demonstrate some movement, for example, opening and closing their mouths, essentially to prove that they're an actual person. The issue is, already people are finding ways around this. It's been found that the system will often accept photos of video game characters, if the game is realistic enough. In particular, people have found that the characters in Death Stranding can be used effectively. It's worth noting that not all sites will allow you to use age estimation, but this method has already been used to bypass the age checks for Discord's Not Safe for Work channels. Another similar criticism is that VPNs, or virtual private networks, are another effective tool at bypassing the age verification tools, as they can be used to mask the location a person is browsing from. They're simple to use, they're cheap, and they're legal. Since the new rules came into force on Friday, VPN apps have rocketed up the Apple App Store charts, with one VPN service in particular claiming that their downloads had increased by 1,800%. Clearly, people are already using them en masse to avoid the new rules. Now, it's worth pointing out here that OFCOM has been very clear that sites are not allowed to advertise the use of VPNs as a way of getting around the new rules. But this seems like a weak protection, given how widespread the use of VPNs already is. In the wake of all this, there was even some speculation that the government could move to ban VPNs. Although the Technology Secretary, Peter Kyle, was relatively quick to make clear that this isn't something the government's planning on. Another of the major criticisms, and something referenced in the intro, is that of over-blocking. Some platforms, worried about breaking the government's rules, have blocked anything marked as not safe for work. This happened on Reddit in particular, with a number of subreddits discussing Israel's action in Gaza now requiring age verification. Clearly then, there are some pretty major criticisms. The whole point of these new rules is that they're meant to balance privacy, security, and free speech with child safety. Critics argue that this is not a balance that the government's got right. Already, an E-Petition calling for the repeal of the Online Safety Act has hit more than 380,000 signatures, and will likely climb even higher in the coming days and weeks. Recognising all of this opposition, Reform UK have promised to repeal the borderline dystopian Online Safety Act if they were elected to government. However, supporters of the Act would argue that while there are those that would be able to evade the new rules, it would still reduce the number of children that are able to access porn online. No law is 100% effective, but we don't let this stop us from pushing ahead with it anyway. In other words, we don't let perfection become the enemy of the good. Moreover, supporters may even agree that there is a sacrifice to be made regarding privacy, security, and free speech, but they'd argue that this is a worthwhile sacrifice for child safety. If you want to know more about this topic, then there's plenty of other outlets reporting on it too. Unfortunately though, every news source has a bias, and no matter how hard each of us try, we'll inevitably miss a story or two, or worse, only hear half the story in the first place. That's where our sponsor this week, Ground News, comes in. Ground News is a website and app that collects thousands of articles to help you better understand the world around you, pulling back the curtain on media bias. This story about the UK's porn ban has been covered by more than 37 sources. We know that more than 8 of these have been reported by the left, and 2 of these have been reported by the right. Every story also comes with a detailed view of the bias distribution, factuality scores, and even specific ownership information. But my favourite part of the app and website is the aptly named blind spot feed. It presents you with stories and articles that haven't been reported on by one side of the aisle or the other. If you lean left, you might have missed this story about Trump talking to the leaders of Thailand and Cambodia about the ceasefire. When it comes to blind spots, it's not just about discovering different stories. It's also about discovering just how political bias frames the stories themselves. Having a tool that helps you spot this and helps you take action really is a game changer. It's no secret that here at TLDR News, we're constantly thankful for Ground News. It's such an incredibly useful platform that captures information you can't get anywhere else, and keeps you informed in a media landscape that's constantly trying to attract your attention and sway you towards or away from certain political viewpoints. If you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage plan using the link in the description, or by scanning the QR code. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.